a heads up about recording. Excellent. Um, One of our videos has like 1,000 plays or something like that. I think it's because we talk about the vegan YouTuber or something, or a TikToker or something like that. The other day, I'm like, huh, 1,000 plays? Well, and then I verified that, by the way, with my sons. I asked both Storm and Zion. I said, "So, is there a vegan TikTok?" And I didn't even get the words out of my mouth. And Zion, my youngest guy, was all over it with examples. And so, anyway, and some details too. So, well, I guess any press is good press. All right, let me look here. And the question, and all right, do you waste? So out of 64 responses, 69% of people weighing in, 44 said yes, 20 said not much, and 0 said no. So, it's difficult for as environmentally conscious or as many things as we have in play. It's difficult not to waste. I just filled up a dumpster, a second dumpster, uh, from farm stuff that I've been cleaning out my garage, and I'm stunned at times at the amount of waste that we have. And this is considering on my farm, and check this out, we have 0 or less than 1% food waste. Chickens are like little velociraptors, and they basically just evolved from dinosaurs and will eat anything like a pack of velociraptors or little piranhas, whatever you put out there, boom, except for onions, avocado peels. Maybe that's it. So they are absolutely, they've taken, since I think we've had them, Julie said, now maybe 13 years, between 10 and 13 years since we were back at our old place. And our food waste is nothing. Because of it. Matter of fact, we can't generate enough food waste to even compost because they eat absolutely everything. If you just had a couple chickens, 2 or 3 chickens, they would probably they would absolutely take care of all the food waste that you have. So even if you have a plan in place or critters in place like we do around our farm to take care of all of that, still going to be some waste. And increasingly difficult not to. And for all the success that like bulk food was having and taking off and being able to do that, and packaging, one of the biggest wastes that food packaging, one of the biggest wastes that we have, obviously now, over the last year, breaks around that. I actually had a friend whose job it was to go around to different natural food stores and things like that, and do bulk and refill bulk, and his job is pretty much gone. So all right, what do you waste the most, though? We have 73 people chiming in, so I think this is a good list. Let's talk about it, and then we'll talk about what challenges you have disposing of your waste or with recycling or something like that. Been having problems making Top Hat account. Top Hat is not mandatory. You have to use a computer or a browser that you can't do it on the app. Yeah, so that's up to you. I will tell you this: if you have any problems whatsoever, you email me. I give you our reps number or email, and they take care of everything. So don't ever get frustrated with it. Just reach out to me. It's somebody else's job to take care of us. So, it's kind of like ringing for room service, but for Top Hat. So, all right. What do you waste the most? 20 people. Wow. 20 folks all said the same: food. That's out of any individual answer that we could just throw out there to the universe, I think that's the most that we've ever had yet. 11 people said water. So I love it, right? What do we waste? Well, I don't know, just the 2 things that we need to survive, to live. No big deal. I'll feel good now crumpling up this piece of paper and throwing it over my shoulder, because it wouldn't have helped me survive. All right, so the 2 top things on our list, and it's true, right? Like yeah, it's a good place to start. Plastic. Ooh, I always like it when people say time. I feel that's somewhat philosophical and existential. I love it. Time, electricity, food packaging, single-use plastics, energy, single-use gas, probably water, plastic bags like Ziploc, soda cans, paper, probably water from my showers, try to make up with minimal dishwashing and minimal laundry. We'll talk about showers and lengthy showers later. I won't ruin your showers yet in the semester moving forward, but this semester I'll ruin it for you sometime this semester. I'm somebody who has been married to a person who might just spend an hour in the shower and feel no regrets whatsoever. She might not even come out unless I was like, hey, is shower, you still got hot water? All right, plastic, prepackaged food, cosmetics, plastics. Buy a lot of objects with plastic wrapping, plastics, fruit, food, spinach goes bad fast, cardboard, electronics, water, unfortunately, trash recycling, expired food. And the last one, which I thought was funny, tissues. My allergies suck. All right, good. A good range of answers. I always think worth it. Um, um, anyway, so what are some challenges? Like why? Right? That's to us. Gathering the data is one thing. It's interesting, but why? Like what challenges do you face regarding waste disposal? Why you picked what you picked, or what challenges you face is it might be related, right? Maybe you're throwing away a lot of plastics or throwing away recycling that you could because your apartment complex simply doesn't provide that, or maybe it's at your workplace, or anyway, I'll be quiet now. What challenges do you face regarding getting rid of waste?
I had a brief question and then I'll answer this. When you were talking about the feeding the chickens anything, just quick aside, does it make their eggs taste any different if they eat a lot of one thing? That might be a dumb question, but
Uh, no, I'm kind of the I'm in that realm of people that's like there are no dumb questions. I mean, I have asked a dumb question in my life. That's my students. I still haven't heard anything where I'd be like, that's dumb. No, that's perfectly acceptable. Not that I have noticed. I will say this: we we only eat really organic foods or foods that are not very processed. So what the chickens get is pretty strict. Like we feed them organic feed from a local company. Luckily, like in Fort Collins Ranchway, we have that, ability to look at that. But then if people were to give us food scraps, like that's why we're pretty picky about that, because I want to keep that legit. There are binders that they put in chicken food or other things like that, soy, things that people are allergic to. And I have heard that, like, if we're claiming that we have organic eggs or whatever, and we're selling them to people, and then somebody gets sick or has an allergic reaction to something like that, that's why that becomes important. Now, as far as taste, I have noticed I had nothing. Yep. They won't eat onion. I love onion. They won't eat onions. I'm trying to think of something that might, alter that. And I will say this, because I think it's a great question. It's a segue to ducks. We also have ducks, and duck eggs are really big. I'll show you sometime comparatively. They're really different, opaque. The shells are harder. They don't taste any different. You know how some people are like, oh, so-and-so, this tastes a little gamey, whatever that might be. I don't know, deer. Maybe that's because it's game. Anyway, but duck eggs to me don't taste any different, but they're bigger, so they have more like white and a bigger yolk. So I think people prefer to use them for baking. Like they love using them for baking. But if I make a quiche, I only have to use 3 duck eggs where I would use like 6 chicken eggs or something like they're that much bigger too. So random aside, but nope, I've not noticed that. And I've never had a time where we've had so much food that they didn't eat everything. Like yet I haven't checked how much food I could dump out there. And of course, in the winter, they're also using calories to stay warm, even though chickens are surprisingly cold tolerant birds. So you have to feed them more if you want them to produce eggs in winter. I think people say that they don't produce eggs, but that's dependent really upon if they're happy or not, if they have enough calories, whatever that might be. All right. Um,
thanks.
yeah, sorry, long answer. Heard feeding them pepper makes a difference. That's only I've heard. Might have to be a lot. Yeah, I don't know. I guess, but they get all sorts of stuff. They had Thai food this week, leftovers that we made. They had some lasagna last night. Embarrassingly enough, my chickens eat better than some food insecure people in our community, and that's why we need to do the food donation thing. All right. So, and then what were you going to say, Natasha, as far as challenges
Oh
regarding
yeah.
food waste?
I said water just because I think as far as food goes, like we have compost in the backyard and I already like get food that's going to expire and make sure I eat all that first. And I don't really buy anything like new that wasn't going to go to the landfill. So I feel like food wasn't my main thing, but with water, I think it's harder to find ways to save it because I'm like, well, I kind of have to shower and I have to wash dishes and I can't like I probably could save it like in buckets, but I feel like it's not as straightforward on like how to reduce water waste unless you're just like taking shorter showers or whatever.
Yeah, and until more recently, in recent years here, right, water collecting was illegal. Now, I mean, I'm going to put that on a long list of things that I am fine doing that are illegal. Okay, like different people, we're all different human beings. This is sociology. Some people, so, and I should back this up to backyard chickens. In Fort Collins, it was illegal for the longest time, and people were still doing it. And when I was taught about chickens from somebody and got them, and I lived in Loveland, it was not illegal in Loveland, because going back a ways, Loveland is like more of a rural farming kind of community. So different rules, right? Like if it was illegal, I was willing to do it. That's fine. Water collection, I was collecting water. Matter of fact, I bought my rain barrels from my neighbor who was applying for like a upper job in the police department in Loveland. And because he wanted to get hired, he can't have anything that they would have discovered that might be illegal, even if it's benign to get that position, like SWAT team or whatever that is. So he knew I was collecting rainwater and was doing it himself. So, there's a big list of things that, what's that look like? That being said, if you have laws that prevent you from recycling or taking things to the landfill properly or saving water, then yeah. And right, we have to incentivize and institutionalize how we do that, how we save water. And of course, in Colorado here, I was just willing to do it because rather than let it go down the sewer, I thought it was more responsible to like water plants with it or help in some way for a state that's in a drought. But again, my mom was somebody that would never break a law if it was illegal, because it's illegal, and that's the generation that she's from, and I respect that. All right. Cosmetic plastics, just about every cosmetic comes wrapped in plastic and in a plastic tuber container. Yep, not to mention microplastics and glitters and nail polishes. Yeah, I guess I had never thought about that. And I suppose another thing would be, you could answer that question for me, somebody. I'm assuming the lip gloss or any of those containers are not recyclable. Like, is there a cosmetics company that's making recyclable containers? You would think that, maybe, I don't know.
There's some that make like the pretty containers that they'll put the makeup in just like the metal tin, and you can swap it out into the like pretty container. Yeah.
As illustrated here. Awesome. So starting to, but not so much, right? Like for the most part, yeah, a lot of waste associated with it. Good. Who else? What are some other challenges that you face with what kind of waste?
For me, I think. Oh, sorry. You can go.
No. Okay then. Sometimes I know this is not necessarily the question, but I find a lot of times people are too lazy, so they just throw trash in with recycling, and I just look at that and go, I don't want to spend the 20 minutes to sort all that out.
Yeah.
So I have to throw it all away.
Yeah, and it's a perfectly acceptable answer. I'm like, what roadblocks or challenges do we have regarding waste? Ourselves, right? Our behavior, the laziness. Yeah. And again, when I say that, not teacher guy over here in like non-Lazyville, plenty lazy here, plenty procrastinating. And I've already told you by deep dark secret about not washing out a peanut butter jar early this semester. So you even know the ways in which I sin against the environment. Okay, what else? Other challenges? Emma, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say for me, I think I waste food packaging the most. Since I'm on campus and in a dorm, most of my meals come from either the dining hall or like the express or the mini market, where I can like put things in my microwave and have it for later. And a lot of it I like rinse out and recycle, and I compost all my food waste. But there's still a lot of packaging like chip bags that are the combination of like the foil and that plastic, and you can't recycle any of those types of bags, even though that's where like a lot of my food comes from, since I am on campus and since I don't have a kitchen to like prepare my own snacks or prepare my own meals.
Yeah, absolutely. And does anybody remember that there was a company that made a biodegradable chip package? What was it? Anybody know? It's just a few years back.
Sun chips.
Sun chips. And what happened? There's like a tragic punchline to this, like there is for most things.
They got rid of it because we complained it was too loud.
Ding, ding, ding. There you go. There's my slow clap of the universe. Yeah, they phased it out because people complained chip bags were too loud. I would like everybody to go grab a chip bag and just try and grab a chip without the dang thing being loud. That's like kind of the nature of chips as they're loud. Somebody's currently working on like a really expensive gold chip that makes no noise. I have no idea. Who knows? Anyway, good. And I saw some of the challenges here that people were saying. There's also the point cosmetics, it's hard sociologically for women not to wear makeup. Yeah, and that's a whole nother discussion too. But yeah, how about ways in which gender causes us to waste more or less or something? I mean, that's again sociology. I love it. I can excuse irreversible ecological damage, but I draw the line at loud chip bags. Yeah, sadly and exactly, right? But this is that piece. I mean, if we know that a great deal of food waste comes from throwing away half the carrots because they're not straight enough, right? Or we can't stop applying wax or whatever it is, or we have to inject apples so that when you cut them, pectin doesn't show. I mean, again, wow, right? Like a lot of the conditions for the waste that we have are can be sociologically managed, right? By looking at behavior and how to change behavior. Again, I think that this is why I'm talking about this pragmatic solutions with the solutions papers and with the way that I want you to think. Because as much as I am far out, man, I'd like to think of the wildest, coolest, like, let's do that sometime. In the meantime, though, there are so many easy ways for us to change behavior that to overlook altering 7 billion people's behavior, like it can be done, right? And I would suggest that altering those behaviors like a chip bag or food waste or little things like that is so easy ultimately that we can do it. And that thankfully that every solution, right, doesn't require some magnificent invention that we've never heard of or seen before to save us. Good. Too much pressure about waste recycling by the consumer. Most waste pollution is caused directly by the manufacturers themselves. Yes. When we look at issues like immigration, we blame the people. We don't blame the companies that pay to bus them here, that pay for the advertisements, that actually are responsible, right? So that is that disproportionate piece that we've been talking about. Ooh, look at that, wound up a few times for that one. And yeah, so responsibility, where does that responsibility lie? How to change it? Okay, maybe one or two other people, what challenges do you face and why? And then we'll move on. Go ahead. Sorry, McKenna.
Sorry. Okay, I guess I'll go real quickly. Again, I also said water because I think also what a lot of people don't realize is that you use water in your cooking and also what you make every day. And I myself love my coffee every day, and I don't always use every single last drop of coffee that I make. And a lot of it gets trapped also in the coffee grinds, and I don't really have a place to compost it on, like where I am. So, like that's something else to note too, is that if you're making something, if you're cooking anything, it's going to, be wasted down the drain no matter what you do.
Let's not disparage my coffee waste. No, just kidding, right? So these are things even that we love though, right? And raise your hand real quick. How many people do not dump water down the sink? Raise your hand. Because there's like people who say, see, that's very few of us actually. How many people don't throw away batteries because they don't know where to, like, if it'll genuinely be recycled, things like that, right? So more people. I got into something, several years back where I always have a glass of water by my nightstand. I very rarely drink the whole thing. And then with the boys, suddenly I was dumping out 3 or 4 or 5 big glasses of water a day and down the sink. If you live in this country and can take unlimited showers, whatever that is, if you have infrastructure like we have here, you're likely doing something that is like most of the world would not do, right? Batteries are one thing, but water is so infinite and so unique and so precious. So if you've gotten into that habit, dump it outside, right? Find a way, a tiny patch of grass over and over and over to water, a house plant, anything. And I was going to mention this at the beginning, and that is gray water. And although I've kind of briefly mentioned it, California is just getting up to date with gray water. We should be there already to have a mechanism for the water in our house that leaves our house to be able to be used for something else. And if you can do gray water systems like in those earth ships, contain septic and things like that, you should be able to do it in any living situation. So apartment building moved the recycling only outside the super unsafe part of the parking lot, blind corner. So it's incredibly hard to recycle. Wow, Yeah, not intuitive, but a simple change. And then one last thing, McKenna, did you want to say something before I move on?
Yeah, so I actually tried to go zero waste. I had like a jar and I would monitor my trash, but this was when I was pre-COVID, when I was in high school and when I was living at home, so it was just a lot easier. Because I went on an environmental volunteer trip and I was really inspired by someone who told me that they can fit all their trash into a tiny jar for the year. So I wanted to try that. And the hardest thing for me was honestly like balancing between water, because if you are using reusable products, you'll have to wash them, and not using wasteful products. Like for example, I was using rags instead of paper towels to clean everything up, and then I would have to wash the rags more often, and because they would get dirty faster, and then use more water. Same thing with reusable jars and everything. It's just difficult to find a balance between the two.
It is. Has anybody in here seen No Impact Man? Okay, this is something that I used to show my classes, but I haven't. I think it's No Impact Man. I'm looking here at another window really quick. And that's from 2010. I think that might be it. It's somebody who tried to live zero waste for a year, and he's in a big city like New York, and they have a kid, and a really interesting challenge though. Could you try to live with zero waste for a year, and how would that require that you change what you're doing? Yeah, interesting. And a lot of apartments, it says, don't have recycling at all. Water reclamation system, great ways for city, improve the sustainability of their water, but they are super expensive. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Fort Collins can do it, right? They've got the money, they can pioneer it. They also have the initiative and the interest. That isn't water reclamation. That isn't something I would suggest for like my hometown of Freeport, Illinois, 26,000 people, doesn't have bike lanes, struggling economically, socially, educationally, in every single way. But out here, it's a whole different story as far as that. All right. Well, let me move over here. And do you recycle more than you garbage? 23 people said yes, 52 people said no. So that is twice that no. And I think that if we were to ask this, I wonder what this would be like asked of a general population in Fort Collins or somewhere else. We always have a recycling that's it's even physically twice the size or whatever of our trash. But I think that there's a lot of dorm living situations, apartment living situations, for people here that are like, would look at this data and that might make an impact on the data. We're always looking for what might that be. All right, let me here, and I will, sorry about that, just set up the screen share. All right. So waste, we will watch together in class, I think on Tuesday. It's just like about a 20-30 minute piece that's embedded into this lecture. You can watch it before then if you want, but it's on e-waste. And it's old, but it is really, really, really good and really, really important. Kind of just like a news piece. It's not even like a formal, we're so used to like these grandiose documentaries now and everything, but that is right. I'm introducing you here on day one to Garbage Cow. And I'll tell you what, Garbage Cow don't care. Don't care about you, and he don't care about me. Now, maybe you have traveled, though, a place in the world where this is like a common thing or something that you saw. Anybody in here familiar with Garbage Cow? If you've done some traveling, where were you and what was it like? And if nobody answers, fine. But usually there's a few people every semester.
I can go. I used to live in Cairo, and this was a really big thing. Obviously, not just with cows, but with like goats and dogs and cats and camels and like everything. Just animals loose in the garbage everywhere in the street, and like people would just burn piles of garbage for fun, and there was like no actual waste collection in a lot of places. So yeah, it was a lot. It was just hectic and chaotic.
Yeah. And intense, and I think fairly typical in many places in the world. Although our infrastructure here, right, that we kind of talk about, we'd be like, wow, really? Like, is that the case? But of course, that's the advantage of even like a landfill or a place to take trash, something like that, because of course these have very real impacts on human health, right? And on the health of the people living in these areas, that oftentimes just an absence of that. So do you waste? There's Garbage Cow again. Do you recycle more than you garbage? And yes, I saw some comments about goats and mowing lawns, and that's what people want goats to do, but they're just going to eat anything that you love. Should I mow their lawn or eat that 100-year-old tree? Tree. Rose bushes? Tree. Rose bushes. Lawn? No, not interested. All right. I have goat bias. I'll just admit it right now. As a sociologist, I can admit that. Actually, my nickname for goats are tragedy machines. That is my official thing. We could talk about that sometime. All right. So can't garbage just disappear though, right? Why does it have to be a problem? And in many ways, it's not. Right? In many ways for us, if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. And certainly an advantage that we have here that, like I just showed with this, back here, this is not out of sight, out of mind. This is right in front of where you live, where you walk by for school. It impacts health. It impacts, all sorts of things. So I also have prisons here, but, Colorado has a lot of prisons and maximum security prisons and personally anyway, thank goodness that they're looking at stopping private prisons, because that's what's driving up the percentage, right? That we incarcerate such a high percentage of people, but they are oftentimes in places where they are out of sight, out of mind, where we don't have to consider it. That doesn't mean, like waste, that it's not a problem. It simply means that only certain people have to deal with it, right? So it is certainly an individual problem, though not always framed that way. Here's like an old garbage cart in around New York City at the turn of the century. That's just getting dumped straight into the harbor at the time. Garbage workers, a lot of times, and we'll learn this later in this, I believe later in this lecture, but Martin Luther King Jr. was actually assassinated while striking with black garbage workers for better pay and equal rights and human working conditions when he was assassinated. So also doing environmental justice work. Not, we think of like just race relations or the civil rights movement, but the civil rights movement works hand in hand, communities of color, where you get the most or disproportionate share of the environmental bads. So, Dr. King working on that as well. So the fact is, though, it doesn't go away, and it's certainly not just a problem of management. It is a problem of use and misuse, and certainly requires multiple entry point investigations. Now, anybody who has seen a pileup of garbage like this in a big city in the United States? Anybody been in New York City on Garbage Day or another place?
Yeah, it's pretty nasty.
Describe it.
There's just these big mountains of garbage bags, and they kind of go into the sidewalk, into the street, and they smell, and there's not a good system of throwing it away.
Yeah. And so my question to you, Noah, would be, if they didn't pick up garbage for 2 weeks, what would New York City look like?
It looked like a giant garbage bin.
I mean, yeah, just the amount of piles on any given garbage day in any part of the city. But yeah, really highlighting how essential, in Social 100, we look at the function of a job and I ask, which is a higher function, brain surgeon or waste disposal collector, person working at a garbage company or something like that. And oftentimes we'll find that functionality is that a brain surgeon is really important, but just how long could we go at the college, or how long could you go at your dorms, or how long could you go, in a big city like that without that? In Rome, it's common to throw it out your windows, straight to piles of streets. Lived there for a bit. Garbage day was chaos. Wow, still in Rome, because that was the plan a long, long time ago also in Rome. Think we'd send our trash into space. Yeah, all of these, right? Just bad ideas. We have to figure out something to do with it. So again, multiple entry points, and we don't really realize it maybe if it's so out of sight, out of mind. All right. So MSW, good abbreviation. Know this for the exam. Should be on there. Municipal solid waste. Just like I said, if I ever run across something that I know will be there. So that is all solid waste, or all solid waste originating from. And then there's a big list here: homes, industries, businesses, demolition, land clearing. And the big one, right, that we sort of identified the other day, just how much energy or CO2 emissions go into it. Yes, I did see that. And I thought sending garbage to the sun was a Futurama reference. But we know that it accounts for a lot of waste. And we're going to look at, exactly the reasons around the tipping point here in our own county, in as far as Larimer County landfill and what that looks like and why, and when those numbers jumped. Then maybe we'll look at that. Product packaging, grass clippings, furniture, clothing, food waste, newspapers, batteries, hazardous waste, sludge, non-hazardous industrial waste. So, I mean, we're talking about so many things here. And of course, as we'll see in some of these upcoming slides, some of these are very much real considerations for us here in Colorado, especially when we're talking about industrial hazardous waste, nuclear waste, things like that. So global production. Now, again, here's a number that I think is statistically significant. 5% significant, 10%, but come on. I mean, 1972 to 2009. So basically, 10 years younger than me. In those 36, 35, 37 years, 250% increase. All right. So how is waste a human construct and problem and something for us to deal with? Well, I mean, in that tiny 30-something period span, having global production of it increase 250%, that is, massively statistically significant. And again, doesn't have to be, is a problem caused by humans, and is something that we absolutely can wrap our heads around and eliminate. So prior to recycling, paperboard, 28.2, this is percentages of what would be municipal solid waste. Food waste, 14.1, and that's not total global. Food waste is quite a bit. Plastics, rubber, leather, textiles, glass, that's 31, plastics, 12.3%. So what kind of waste are we looking at? All right. I think this is interesting and so worthy of looking at and maybe making some sociological observations. Is this our third week of class? Is this third official week? Second, third? Okay, so 3. We're not quite professional sociologists, but you are almost there. You're very, very, very close. So what do you think? Bulgaria, Latvia, look at these numbers. Landfilled. Who landfills, right? And why? Recycled, compost is in the white, and then incinerated. Now, keep in mind that the incinerating that's going on in a lot of the countries that are doing more of it is the type of incinerating where they're actually producing very little pollution and even capturing of the energy itself, which we can talk about, or I might have some links embedded into here. But how waste is managed in the European Union varies tremendously. So what do you think? Obviously, we're not in here. We're just looking at the European Union. Make some observations.
How does Germany have no landfill waste?
I think that the little waste that they have might be sent elsewhere. That is my guess. Many countries try and do this. We've been told very recently by certain countries that we're done taking your waste. So, obviously one of our ideas is not only export waste and hazardous waste to other countries, but even hazardous jobs. We do that as well. But Germany's on top of the world, though, with recycling, on top of the world with these incinerator plants that are generating very little pollution. So, yeah. Somebody's observation, more developed equal less trash. Usually in Japan, they burn trash to create power, right? And we're not really there yet for the most part here. That is some of that. Other thoughts or sociological?
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, No, go ahead.
Oh, so I think another thing that has to do with it is like the space for landfills, because you notice like the Netherlands and Austria, I mean, like they just don't have like the land to have these large landfills, so they have to like figure out something else. So I think that plays into it as well.
So I guess my counter question is, what business does the United States have asking other countries to take our waste? I mean, it's not a snarky thing. I just popped into my head. I'm looking at all of these. You said that we have so much land, right? So much space. We're not trapped by the Alps and not even the Rockies, right? You know, so just gets me thinking. I mean, I got to consider all of this. Interesting. Anyway, yeah, good. Location for sure. How much land do you have? I think a lot of this has to do with poverty and access, right? I mean, as we look at Bulgaria, Latvia, Lithuania, Cyprus, Greece, Romania, I mean, these are some, many of them struggling countries. Whereas we look at some places, Finland, UK, Italy, Spain. I mean, it's very different even once you get down there to Portugal in as far as most garbage getting thrown, almost all garbage really getting thrown away in places like Bulgaria, Latvia, Lithuania. My guess is that those numbers for those countries include other numbers or garbage from or waste from these other places. And so, like with e-waste, places have turned it into a big business, even though it's destroying all of these rural settlements and towns and poisoning the water and stuff like that. That's, it's the work that people can find. It's the work that people are willing to do. It's where they're sending the e-waste from here to those countries, causing, some pretty intense environmental impacts. And this is another place where, environmental racism, giving your trash to a port, absolutely, it's a form of environmental racism. Good. Not good for environmental racism, but important that we consider all of the conditions that go into these realities for people. All right, nuclear waste. Nuclear power plants generate approximately 20 metric tons of used nuclear fuel per year. I remember being in a science class in 7th grade where I was chosen to be the lawyer against nuclear power. And then there was a lawyer and students like for and against nuclear power. Then we had to present our case. And anyway, it's close to where I live, actually, because Freeport, Illinois, where I'm from, is only about 40 minutes from Byron, Illinois. And there's a nuclear power plant in Byron. And actually, they were looking where to put the nuclear power plant, and they were offering major incentives to the communities in rural Illinois if they would take on the nuclear power plant. Where they decided to take it on, Byron, I remember then in high school, because that school was top notch. I mean, it was fancy for what we were used to. But they actually built it, and you could look this up, but the Byron nuclear power plant is built on one of the Midwest's largest faults that hasn't had a major seismic thing for a long time and is predicted to do that. Oh yeah. Anyway, and I guess I could add an awesome layer to that for everybody and say that not only are they built on the Midwest's largest fault, or one of the largest fault, but they put the nuclear waste from that plant underneath the plant, closer to the fault. So anyway, hey, human beings, pat ourselves on the back. Of course, we understand Fukushima. This is a satellite radar from several years ago looking at the radioactivity into the ocean. And we know this, I've already mentioned this, we know that we have tuna populations within that first year. Chernobyl, but much worse, I would say much worse, because on a coast, and the plan still, for the most part, though it's an oversimplification, is to pump water. And they were just talking about this like a few months ago. It made the news again. That's still the plan. But that was the plan years ago when this happened, is to just pump seawater onto these areas and the rods so that they can't overheat. But that water is then going back into the ocean. And I think with some pretty big global externalities, which is why I asked some pretty heavy-handed questions here. Question, is it possible to prevent a disaster if the fault becomes active, or is it too late? That's hard to say. It depends on what kind of seismic activity would happen. And of course, we are relocating much of that waste from other power plants to our own state right here. Somebody unmute your mic and tell me where that is. And somebody already typed it in there. There it is. Rocky Flats still has this. Wasn't there some sort of cleanup? There have been multiple cleanups at Rocky Flats. But here's the problem is that there's no real safe way to store nuclear waste. Like, we haven't found it. We haven't done it. We're putting it in the mountains. When it leaks into the ground, all of that is running downhill. And I don't mean like rivers of waste, but I mean into underground mountain aquifers, and then where, right? So yeah, repeat waste violations there. CSU used to have a nuclear reactor in the basement of the energy building. I'm stopping the share right here. What? Not what? Excuse me. I know. Jordan.
Yeah, I learned about it like in the 50s or 60s. They had like a small one that they used for like labs to like teach people about nuclear reactors, but they didn't really know anything about it. But it only output a small amount, like nothing really harmful for the most part. But there's like a picture of them wheeling it on this big like trolley thing in like the Oval into campus.
Sorry, like my facial expression,
Yeah.
like size of it, none of that matters to me. I'm just like, huh. I mean, and of course, the 1950s, they literally had no idea whether or not, when they were testing the bombs, they would keep exploding or not. And they invited entire communities of people to come up to these ridges in the desert where they would test these things, and then tested these communities years later. And they were, of course, massive rates of cancer, people dying in large numbers, the homes, the dust in the homes themselves. These are, wow. But, and I'm not saying they did it not safely, but let's just put that in the context of 2020, shall we? Wow, that's very interesting. And after every class period that I have, I think for the last 15 years, I've immediately gone from class to like the internet or a library, or because I want to know more about that. Wow, okay, well, just wheeling it through campus. All right, good. Yes. Oh, we do have a seed bank on campus. That is very cool, and we will talk about that this semester. How do you feel about suggesting nuclear energy is the most efficient, cleanest, and lowest waste form of energy? I'll say this. I feel like if you don't have a way to dispose of it, that sounds like the worst form of energy and the most dangerous thing you can do. I won't, however, scientifically respond to that, because I think that there are aspects to it which could be cleaner than other energies. I think there are aspects to it that could have less weight. Absolutely. So how I feel is, no, don't. Wrong form of energy. I argued, like I said, in 8th grade, I wasn't just placed on that. I believed even what, then what I was arguing, which is if you don't have a way to dispose of the waste, you probably can do better with the sun. That being said, that's my feeling soapbox. That's very different from our scientific soapbox, which I think there are arguments to be made on both sides. Still, I would suggest that the scientific argument that outweighs them all is that we have cleaner, more responsive, faster forms of renewable energies. So, I think it's like coal. It's a dinosaur. That being said, we can't really get rid of it, or we've refused to try to. Okay, good. Some seed bank questions. All right, I'm going to start the screen share again. I love this class, though. This is great. Lots of fun. Okay, so many feel international intervention is needed. I asked these same questions to you, right? So global war action or global military action versus global environmental inaction. So I guess I can stop share here and head back to the round of questions. There we go. So first question, I have a series of questions here, right? And they're sort of all related. One goes into the next, goes into the next. Okay, and the question is, should the international community force intervention for a disaster continuing at the Fukushima reactors? 65 people said yes, 9 said no, 5 said C. So that's just the international community forcing intervention. So I'm very vague there. And now I'm going to get a little bit different with the next question. If political action were to take place and nothing were resolved, would you approve military action to force environmental action? Oh, check it, check it. Sorry. That's like data collection for nerds. Ooh, check the data. Big money, big money, big money. 37 to 37. Now it gets interesting. Good. Now this is why I appreciate having, you know, a tool like this for the class. So tell me why, if political action were to take place, but nothing is resolved, which we're all familiar with in this country, would you approve military action moving forward? What do you think? We're split 37 and 37, and then 3 for like.
I don't think we should like enforce it with military action, because now it's like if somebody just doesn't do something you don't want them to do, you don't like just force them to do it. And then that would create a lot more problems. And I think you'd stray away from just the environmental side of it, because then you'd go into like moral like conflicts and stuff, because you're like, I don't know, it'd just be bad, I feel like.
Good. Yeah, I appreciate your input. Okay, who else? We're split down the middle here, so this is interesting. Oh, somebody just voted for yes. Now it's 38-37.
I was talking to my roommate about this one actually, and we were talking about how a lot of the people who don't support maybe some of the environmental actions are big fans of like the military. So maybe the military coming in and saying like, you need to follow these actions might persuade them to follow them because it's coming from the military.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
it does make sense. And as a matter of fact, I mentioned that in one of the last class periods, you know, making climate change a national security issue and involving the military does add a lot of cred and allies that might not otherwise be environmentalists. Now, I'm going to keep it open before I throw a whole nother thing in here. I'm going to keep it open for a few more responses. What do you think?
As much as I am like anti-violence and don't really like the military, I think that climate change should be declared as a national and global emergency. And I think, like Maya was saying, we need people to take it more seriously. And a lot of times those people are the ones who trust authority. And if authority is backed up by the military or a strong government, then it might cause people to pay more attention to climate change and all the disastrous effects it's had, as well as toxic waste.
Absolutely. Basic sociology. More people will wear masks in the next few months because more people are hearing wear masks. It's advertising rule of 10. It's looking around and seeing other people do it. It's, you know what I'm saying? It's like behavior modeling. Yes. Same thing as what we're talking about here, or at least similar applications. Okay. I could hear from maybe somebody else. I think we are missing something though.
I think that like, it's one thing to have the military say to the people in our country that it's a big problem. But when you start enforcing rules on other countries, then it could get kind of dangerous because they might not want to follow our rules.
Absolutely. So what are we missing here? Because I think that we're making one assumption as I'm scrolling through these. You know, I think we're missing something here. What do you think?
I think one thing that I think, kind of to piggyback off of Madison, I don't think the military going into other countries has to be a negative interaction. And I think a lot of people kind of have this stigma. Like my brother just got back from Kosovo, and he was helping with COVID relief there, with people that don't have access to flying into the countries and cities where they could get access to medical care. So I don't think it always has to be negative. And I think if like a lot of the lower income communities there don't have a say in the choices of whether environmental action should be taken. And so military coming in and discussing that with the higher ups, I think could add a beneficial element.
Okay, good. And ding, ding, ding. And here is how I'm trying to get us to think. Now, you really could not find a more anti-war, pro-peace individual than this guy right here. Not even because of my parents. They weren't that way at all. But since I was born, I'm like, peace, peace, war. No, you know, I was like one of 3 students my age in high school protesting the Gulf War. Now, that being said, I have had a lot of students that are in the ROTC or the military that I've worked with over the past 15 years, and they are some of my favorite people. And they have gotten me to think, right? Sociologically, I'm asking you to be culturally pluralistic. And those students, in a way that I am like very far from, have gotten me to think about all of the ways that our military, with the biggest budget, I mean, it's the biggest budget is militarization in our culture. Education gets nothing, poverty I mean, literally, virtually nothing compared to our military budget. So what we were missing over here, though I do think that our military often comes with violent civilian casualty, that is true, but you have infrastructure, you have vehicles, you have mobilization, you have money. We could absolutely, the military, and in the meantime, with the military helping instead of, so I was vague on purpose. If political action isn't taken, should the military intervene? And I do that on purpose because I think that our first go-to is battle, right? But what about with that country's approval, or with like COVID or any of the other things that people have been talking about here, right? We could really address, do action, behavior, and make inroads on climate change with the military in a nonviolent way that rebrands, frankly, or whoever Frank is, but rebrands the tone of the military for the rest of the world, which we also sorely need. So yeah, I'm never a person that thinks that we could solve something right away with force, but that shouldn't be the only thing or way that our military operates in regards to the resources, intelligence, and ability, things that they have available. Tools, right? They have a lot of tools, unlike me. I own a farm and it's just awful. Having the biggest military, we show the rest of the world our power. Yes, and there is something about that as well. And maybe we could just put that in the pants for a while and start shaking hands and helping people out. That would be fantastic. All right. Let me look back here. What time is it? 1:27. Good. Let's go a little further. And then I think I had one more question and said, if not military action, what action should be taken in a few words? So perhaps some of these answers include that, but let me just read a few of these. Legislative mandates and subsidies encouraging sustainable practices. Yes, yes, and yes. However you just wrote that, whoever wrote that, legislative mandates and subsidies that encourage sustainable practices. You didn't even type it in a heavy-handed way. You typed it perfectly. Yeah, you know, there's going to have to be some mandates. There's going to have to be some caps. There's going to have to be some use limits. There's going to have to be some like uncomfortableness. And it's about time we announce that to people instead of worry about stepping on toes. I like that. That is how we really, and I know that people, we also don't like to be over mandated and over have too many rules, and it's a free country. And yeah, but you get stuff done with your political system. To say that the Democrats and Republicans are the same, or that all politics is useless, that's ridiculous. And it couldn't be further from the truth. And that doesn't mean that I'm a person that thinks that everything the government does is worthwhile, but over demonization of the processes and keeping it functioning the way that it is in important ways, we have to recognize that as well. Legislative action, no idea. The military get involved makes me feel uncomfortable. Trading restrictions, government should allow science to take action. Yes. And science doesn't care because science is science, right? So COVID doesn't care who you are. Gravity doesn't care, right? You know, if gravity's a hoax, all you have to do is open up a 3rd-story window and drop something out or walk out, and it'll be really apparent to you what a hoax it is not. Monetary action, more laws and awareness, social action, true commitment by the president or other government officials, a true commitment would be nice. Education of disastrous effects, stronger policies, bipartisan political reform, ideally, yes. Strict action, unsure laws, financial penalties. Hey, do people respond to financial penalties and incentives? Absolutely, they do. Absolutely. Yeah. Government responsibility, I don't know enough to judge. Corporations need to be held accountable, harsher laws, individual action, personal action, taxing. Oh my goodness, somebody just wrote taxing. And they wrote it and nobody in here died. It's like, I love your generation because it's like gender. Yeah, it's important, but we're not hung up on it. Taxing for some stuff, sure, why not? I mean, it's like socialism. None of these things are like such intense, like unknown trigger words for people who are like 20. It's just another thing to deal with. I love that. Oh my goodness, somebody typed taxes. I think the world outside this classroom is going to have a heart attack. All right, the course of nature. What action should be taken? The course of nature. Nonviolent direct action, I love that. Fiscal government lawmaking, grassroots efforts, force people with laws and fines, scrutinization of climate change. All right, good, good, good. All of those things. And again, I think that we would come up, Singapore litter laws. Yow, that's a bit intense, but yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. All right, so we have a lot of ideas here. I love it that it's action. I love it that it's forcing action. I love it that it's nonviolent, community-based, grassroots action. I like making laws. Yeah, we've got, imagine that. We do have an entire body of people whose job it is to make laws, and not all of them have to be nonsensical. And oftentimes there are many of them that are used to protect human beings, our natural world, and really become quite important to us. Absolutely. Okay, let me look back here. And, oh yeah, let me do a screen share here. I think that this is really interesting. Are there, I'm hoping, but I don't know, do we have any artists in this class? Hopefully we have some art majors. Disaster and art, how artists respond to change the course of environmental damage. We have to understand that the relationship between Fukushima and Japan and like the bomb and nuclear energy, this is a historical thing. There is a lot of momentum and habit energy in this culture with this. So I think one of the most awesome ways or awesome responses to come out of this to draw attention to this would be artists and what artists have done to draw attention to it. There's the reactors. So when we see somebody in a nuclear, reactor outfit, or when we talk about nuclear waste or this, that, we don't have the relationship that culture has with that. Both aggressively and violently, and here is a disaster that's ongoing. And so we're talking about, decades and decades of fallout from dropping the bomb. And we also should understand that they were up against the ropes. Our country knew that. We decided to drop the bomb anyway. So a lot of this, we are wrapped up in as a culture as well. I think that's garbage yak, or it might even be, I don't know. That looks like a Labradoodle with horns, which are some of the softest dogs ever. All right, so what are our links to waste on climate change as I wrap up at least a little bit for today? So everything we discard is embodied energy. Great test question and definition straight from the text to the lecture and then on the test. The sum total of energy utilized throughout an entire product life cycle. So yeah, we're going to look at life cycle analyses. And is it better to use, I think the text looks at, oh yeah, we'll get to that, but a ceramic cup maybe, and a paper cup, and reusing the paper cup versus the ceramic cup, but it's all a choice, right? Discarding items waste a lot more than we realize, right? So that's when we look at life cycle analyses or this embodied energy, that's everything that went into making it, right? The people working at those jobs, the energy at the place, the waste of that place, the landfill that it eventually ends up in. Embodied energy of a glass or a plate or something, how much energy and water is used to wash it each time? What is the reuse value and amount? So obviously we know that landfills emit greenhouse gases and release a significant amount of methane. And another great term, or important that I think we know at least, is anaerobic decomposition. This is why we're trying to keep some of these things separate, food waste and grass clippings and things like that, from just burying them, where then they break down and cause even more of those, right? I mean, the breaking down of biodegradable material by microorganisms in an oxygen-free environment means that CO2 becomes very potent, right? That methane becomes very concentrated. And landfill methane is the third largest human source. So when I was a kid, we just took the trash to the dump, and then I think they just burned up practically everything, landfilled most of it, burned a lot of it in Freeport, Illinois. There was no consideration. Is it grass clippings? Is it paint? Now they ask you a whole series of questions, and we weigh it, and we want to know what that's all about, and keep track of waste and keep track of that data. But there's a lot of pushback for that even. I remember going to the Larimer County landfill when they got the scales in, and the person working there was like, I don't know why we have to do this for Obama, blah, 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 blah. And I said something like, well, it's probably important we keep track of our waste. And she just handed me my receipt and was like, So, okay. I guess she didn't want to talk about that, right? But it is close to home, right? Here is the big uptick, right? As we look at this, check it out. We're looking at cubic yards of waste in the Larimer County landfill. We're only going through 2014 here, but look at this, 2010, we're at 645. I mean, by the time you get 4 years later, you are at, look at the number, 1 million more cubic yards. Talk to me about this. Why do you think there's such a huge jump between 2014 or 2013, 2014? Yes, people love Colorado, but when we look at this, like as sociologists, we're asking ourselves, what's behind this and why? Does anybody have anything as far as an answer or a guess at what they think here? I mean, population growth, but it's due to things. There's reasons that people move out to Colorado.
Maybe, I just saw the chat, but legalization of marijuana is maybe a good point.
Yeah, I think when I said that, everybody just kind of dawned on everybody all at once. Right? There's other reasons people move to Colorado. People are like, yeah, weed. So that was that. Thanks, Jason, for narrowing that down from like 100 things to one. My hope is that other states keep legalizing so people quit moving here and using it like their parents' basement. Oh, I know, that's mean of me. But seriously, go back to Illinois. Anyway, all right, so yeah, look at the jump, right? So policy, we have to think about all of these things. What happened when something, and of course, a lot of the people that are coming to Colorado are like medical marijuana refugees, people that are looking for treatment for their kids because they can't in other states. And I joke about move back to Illinois, but I guess Illinois is now a legalized state. Yeah, my mom would go with her 79-year-old friend to the dispensary after last January, and never before then because it was illegal. And if it's illegal, never, never, never. And then, January, and there she is with her friend Betty, 2 80-year-olds driving, getting there. Wow, the candy box. I mean, the list of things, they were very interested. I'm just going to say that. All right. Anyway, and most people are. So yeah, political reasons, policy changes, people moving here because of techs and jobs and yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, what used to be all of those other states' problems became Larimer counties and Boulder counties, and right as we deal with this mass influx that we have had to the state, for quite some time now, really. But a big jump there when we look at those dates, those times. Let me screen share here. More slide. Okay. All right. He looks so friendly. Even though it's COVID, I want to hug that guy. What's up, buddy? I'm glad you're doing a good job. Thank you. And yeah, my partner worked at Olive Garden, so I probably won't tell you a whole lot of the behind the scenes until we talk about the food chapter, but let's just say I know a lot about Darden restaurants. Mouse poop and staples in the breadsticks? Don't tell me, Jason. I like that place. Okay, fine. I won't ruin it for you. But that was like a decade ago, so it's probably fine. I work at Red Robin, and we keep our scraps to feed the dishwasher's chickens. Oh, fantastic. Cool. I thought that server was from maybe a really young Obama, but no, probably not. Okay, what do you think here? Your place of work saves the chicken, saves scraps for one of the dishwasher's chickens. But that's an individual thing, right? That's probably not mandated. I remember when Julie did work for Darden restaurants though, and they didn't recycle anything. Maybe, I don't even think the cardboard that they had lots and lots and lots of. What do you think? Does your job take measures to reduce waste? Yes or no? Where do you work if you want to, or where did you work if you want to participate? Do they do that?
So I work for facilities management on the CSU campus. So I definitely can say it's a heavy mix between yes and no. We definitely have areas where we recycle our metals and we recycle our plastics and stuff like that. But at the same time, we also have the company that's in charge of the irrigation people. So you see how great that, like they're really good at watering the sidewalks. So it's just one of those things where, I see them end up like not watering the same places. They're watering it when it's raining outside. Like it's just a huge lack of just like water intake. And also our actual vehicles are still very heavy diesel guzzlers just because we don't have the fundings to get anything better. So that's definitely something that I've noticed.
Right. What's the shoes that are really uncomfortable but really popular? Vans. Yeah. Somebody said that they worked in the mall, I think at that store, and that everything came in a box, and then each individual shirt or shoes or everything was individually wrapped in plastic besides. Like not a box with a bunch of shirts or a bunch of shoes, but everything they had, this individual said, came wrapped in plastic on top of plastic. And then they had no mechanism for that. That's just what I know about that's the gossip that I know about Vans from last semester. Anybody else?
I work at Moby Arena for a lot of the sports teams and equipment. And like you said, a lot of the clothes, not all of them, but some of the nicer ones, they're all individually wrapped in plastic. But that's from like Under Armour and the supplier. So I guess it's not really like their fault at CSU. But another thing that we do, and something that the training center does for sports medicine, they don't use any paper towels. They're all rags and like old, just old pieces of fabric that I do the laundry for like every day. So there's hundreds and hundreds of rags that you use to wipe down and sanitize everything because of COVID, but you're still not wasting all these paper towels.
I mean, collectively, I wonder how many thousands of dollars the schools spend on paper towels in a given year. It's kind of like my thing with food. Like, it's probably more expensive to have 40 ingredients, even if those 40 ingredients are cheap and they suck, right? Like eventually there's a place where you're saving money by finding a different way, always. Worked at Panera, they donate all the extra bakery foods. Good, my roommate and I are planning to dumpster dive. I'm scared of getting caught. I lived with my friend, and of course it's a privilege thing. He was going to Moody Bible College in Chicago. We chose to live on the streets for an entire weekend. But that's, again, it depends on where you're doing it. It was a bit dangerous where we were for that. When we slept out, we did the whole thing, weekend in Chicago, trying to experience things from a homeless perspective. And we'll talk about that though in the food chapter for sure. I'm saying furniture that way. Yeah, furniture. All right, good. So yeah, a lot of challenges here. And certainly where we work, not always, and of course you have to understand that, like, if you have this much waste, imagine how many cardboard boxes and plastic wrappers Olive Garden goes through, or something, whatever, any place, right? Yeah, good. So that's a lot, especially if there's no mechanism in place. Has anybody here ever tried to change that at their workplace?
I have, but since I work at Red Robin, it's like a big corporation. They're like, nah, we can't do anything special or anything. Like the only thing that's special we can't do is for the chicken scraps, but they won't let me do anything else.
Right. And some places, right, corporate policy. And I'm not sure, I don't think I have it on the list. I'll have to check this semester, and maybe it's more towards the food chapter, but we watch a great documentary we have in the past called Dive, DIVE exclamation mark, and it is about food waste, which is one of the biggest really pieces of waste besides building waste that or forms of waste that we have. Worked at Whole Foods, serves an affluent community. The compost recycling are pretty advanced. right? And a lot of those places, Vitamin Cottage, other places, though they lock their dumpsters, or they don't want people to come there, they at least donate some of the stuff daily, you know, to the Larimer County Food Bank, more than they used to, but not enough to prevent the massive amounts of waste, for sure. Natural Grocers does a good job. They do a pretty good job. Yep, that's where Julie works, is at Vitamin Cottage or Natural Grocers. And, you know, they definitely, there are people that come in there because they're smaller and will grab all the produce scraps for their chickens. Or, you know, there's like this old guy, I can't remember his name, and he comes in all the time. And sometimes we get boxes of produce, stuff like that. So, yeah. Saw a video of how Old Navy cuts up any clothes and throws them away so people can't dive for them. Well, let's give the slow clap of the universe to Old Navy today. I proudly can say I've never owned a pair of their whatever trash in my life. Oh, sorry. No, I won't attack Old Navy today. Getting kind of spicy. All right. I will, with that, I will wrap it up, but I will first say, does anybody have at all, ooh, this looks interesting. Worked at a guest ranch, dumped out drinking water, asked our manager to empty the water to other clean sources for the horses. They said it would be too much work. Well, I got nothing. All right. And I'll have to stop reading these comments. I might read them later because I will save them. I will upload this video. We will not meet until Tuesday. When we meet Tuesday, you will have already had a study guide over the weekend. I will release new questions. This is it. This is it. You'll have the study guide this weekend. Sorry. And the test will be over chapters 1 through 3. Watch the lectures again, read the chapters again. If you have any questions for me or you want to meet, I am available as usual. Does the essay need to be focused on specific greenhouse gases, or can it just be solutions to any issues? Greenhouse gases is the overriding thing. Within that, there are many multiple entry points, and you could pick any one of them. Yeah, you don't just want to address greenhouse gases, because I am looking for as specific of a solution as you can. Let's test over chapter 1 and 2. Nope, 1 through 3. Any other questions today? Nope. Anything? Nothing? All right. Well, for the essays, are you looking for come up with our own solutions? No, and I mentioned this a couple times, and I'm fine saying that again. You can piggyback off of something that you saw, but how would you implement it here or in the state, or how can it make, it can't be just such a broad thing, right? So no, there are a lot of solutions. It would be a real challenge if I was asking you to come up with a completely original solution for greenhouse gases. But yeah, okay. I think I'm gonna leave it there. Mask up. Thank you for doing that when you're out in the world. Be safe, but don't let that encroach on your mental health. And if it is, or if you're not getting enough sun or talking to people enough, we could Zoom someday, right? We'll sit down and chat if you're not talking to me enough in boring ways. I don't know. You have peers. Anyway, make sure that you're reaching out to them, because I'm very serious. I want everybody to continue to take care of themselves. Be good people and do good things. I will see you on Tuesday. Yep. Dienstag? Is that in German? Is that Dienstag? Montag, Dienstag, Mittwoch. Anyway, talk to you later, folks. Peace.
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.